Hello, everyone.
Eagle.
Just gonna give it one more minute to see if we pass the 10 people threshold. Okay, let's get started. So thanks everyone for joining. I think I'm going to move this to a bi-weekly since I see that there is no, we are doing the progress on the Ansible repository, but there are no new topics at the moment. So if it's okay with everyone, I'm going to change this to a bi-weekly meeting, unless of course there would be something important in the middle, we can always revert back. Any objections?
No objection. I do have a topic for today, but yeah, no objection to. But it's kind of where we're
Okay,
at already.
then shoot then. Go ahead. What's the topic?
Yeah, in the TSC last week, I brought in a document talking about what are the types of things that Intel wants to see OPI working on, and the top item was about writing a spec for provisioning and lifecycle, so that we as the vendor would have a spec to compare ourselves against and to market with, to say, hey, we are compliant with these things as part of the OPI spec, and we're working on these other things, and these other things are not supported, type of thing. And so and I linked the spec that we have been working on here in this forum. So my question was, I'd like to link the spec and mark it as sufficiently as a work in progress off the main page, so people can find it if they're coming to look at to see what OPI is, and instead of it just sort of being buried. I changed the name to just spec, as Boris suggested, and would like to figure out how we start to flesh out pieces of it to get it ready for to a point where we can ratify it. So I think that it was purposefully high level, but I think that we're at the stage now. We link it off the main page, call it the sort of straw man spec, that we can start to go dive deeper into each of the different sections, cross-link some of the work that we're doing, what we've already done with SCTP, cross-link some of the work they're doing with Ansible, so that we can have it, get to a point where we could, PDF it and call it a 1.0 or some sort of version number that people can refer to. So that was my item to bring up.
I think that we have been running around this topic of defining something very, very unified that all vendors will comply to. Basically, since we started this this OPI thing, correct me if I'm wrong. Now, I do understand the point. I do understand the need, and I think that all vendors would want to have something like that, so they can, test themselves and see, am I doing it? Am I not doing it? Am I OPI compliant? Or I'm not OPI compliant? But since, as we see in the meeting so far, people are, first of all, keeping their cards to themselves a lot of the time, and we can't blame anyone for that. And it's really hard to define something that all vendors must comply to. So I think we have to keep it eye level as it is today. I don't think that we can dive into something, things that are very, very specific. What is your view of something that you can PDF?
I think for now, maybe just to take the baby steps of taking the very high level thing and just linking that off of the page, and then discussing in the TSC with all the vendors and partners and say, hey, this is our next step in the TSC is to say, hey, we want to put together not exactly a roadmap, but we want to start listing out the things that we want to get done, so that like if I'm a vendor and I would now realize that, oh, okay, we're starting with the basics. We're starting with provisioning and lifecycle, and we want to get something out, even if it's just high level, ratified by the TSC in some sort of reasonable time frame. So really the baby step that I'm thinking is, let's put the spec, let's link it off the page and say, hey, this is what we're working on in this forum, and this is what this is what the
what's the specific page that you want to list it on?
I'm flexible, but today the only way you can get to that spec dot markdown is through GitHub. Is you have to go and you have to know it's there. While there is no there's nothing on the OPI website about it. There's nothing on even on the, like, if you go to the GitHub OPI and lifecycle, there's nothing there on the README inside GitHub. So I guess to have a crisp proposal, I'd say let's link it off the README and OPI Prov Life and in GitHub, and let's in the outreach committee do a blog post or something like that to say, hey, this is we started a spec and we're starting to drive towards a spec that can be ratified as the definition of OPI and definition of OPI provisioning and lifecycle management. And that I would say would be the extent of what I would propose, is just to say that we're getting started, make it easy for people to access it, take a look at it. And I would agree with you that high level is better. I'd rather have a high level thing we can all agree on rather than a really specific thing that we're going to trip over. Maybe a specific thing is in the end better for an end user, but I'd rather have something that can get really good alignment rather than forcing us into, you know, having
Oh, I
to go
understand
over
what
the
you're
details.
saying. First of all, I'm totally okay with linking it in the main README. This is the easiest path forward, right?
Yeah.
Anyone has any objections to that? Especially if we are saying it's a work in progress, of course.
Yeah.
Okay, so consider that done. I mean, you can open the a small amount to the README, and I think we are all fine with it.
Cool.
To upload it there. Regarding the main OPI website and all that, let's wait for it to be a bit more mature, and then we can link it there, I guess.
Yep, makes sense.
Okay, then sounds good to me. Now, one thing we should... Oh, damn it, I don't remember if we already... We talked about the fact that we want to add to edit the lifecycle man. I'm just trying to remember the notes that we have added in NVIDIA, and we didn't open an MR to fix them. But we probably should. It's been on our backlog for a long time internally. So yeah, on the provisioning, we wanted to add the Redfish part, but I think let's keep the discussion on the MR that we should open. PR we should open for the doc, but marking it as a work in progress and something we can start taking a look to is great. Regarding the more specific parts, we are trying to drive it through implementation as much as we can. So like the Redfish part, we are trying to do the Ansible, which hopefully will motivate vendors to align to, you know, a certain scheme. And really, folks, we would love to see you publish your Redfish scheme so we can, you know, make sure that everything is supported and get more eyes on the Ansible repository. But if you have if anyone have a more concrete suggestion or to drive, you know, things that are specific, not at a very high level, I would love to hear that. Or if you have any other project that is not the Ansible playbook collection that you want to drive in OPI, also would love to get some suggestions.
I have a question about the procedure in general.
Mm-hmm.
Everything what we suggest here, is that supposed to go through the TSC at some point to approve it?
I guess depends. Depends on if we think it should go like to the TSC. If it's a big thing that we are driving, if it's something that we are enforcing, and so on. But everything that is on the spec currently, if you take a look, it's either already been approved by the TSC, like the SZTP part, for example, or it is something that we agreed internally in our previous docs that was reviewed.
Do we have any requirements that are coming from either customers or the technical steering committee? I mean, it would, to me, it would seem simpler to track things as either issues or feature requests and then assign people to like flesh them out, and then, or you know, when people will have some issues or feature requests, and then we can agree whether or not these things are in scope, out of scope, and then we have, like, you know, a list of things to go do. Does that make sense?
I'm not sure that I understood what you said. I'm not aware of a list of feature requests or issues that exist.
Right. I mean, it's kind of like we generally talk about, well, we have to lifecycle these things. So we have to do an initial deployment. We have to discover, inventory these things. And then we've kind of lumped in, we lumped in telemetry with it. But I guess, so what you end up with is there's multiple ways to kind of do that, you know, I mean, and then without, what would be really nice is just to have a test suite, right? That you could say, okay, I'm compliant to it, right? Because here's the test. If you pass these things, then you support all these features properly, right? But it seems like that's kind of putting the cart before the horse because we don't know. There's some opens there, I think, on how that's specifically implemented, you know?
You are totally right, and this is what we are trying to drive with the whole Ansible collection part. We wanted to have a product, set of playbooks in that case, that we can run against any given card. And if it passes, then we know that the Redfish part of this card is compliant with OPI. That's what I meant by driving specifics through implementation. Now, that's on a very specific part, which is like the runtime configuration and I guess maybe the provisioning aspects, but we can also drive similar things to telemetry. Maybe if we agree on a set of metrics that the device can expose and the way to collect them, for example, we can definitely write a collector, and if the metrics are reported and the graphs make sense, like the function that we compose of them makes sense, and then we can mark this as the telemetry part is supported in this card.
I think telemetry could be somewhat problematic because it depends on the application level, right? Like, so if you are taking an XPU and you're creating like a smart switch out of it, that's one thing. A distributed firewall might be like, or maybe it's just a storage device, right? So it's the telemetry that you would get out of it may not make, you know,
Oh no, when I said
depend on the
telemetry, I
application.
meant, I definitely didn't mean things that are that in depth or depending on a specific application running on the XPU. We need to find the least common denominator here, something that we can query, or if we want to have like specific XPU modes of operations that we want to test against, and for them get the telemetry. But I just telemetry is like, because this is what you mentioned, but this goes to say for everything else.
I guess for telemetry, we can start with the device matrix as a focus rather than applications, because that will be the least common denominator, I guess. So that can be a starting point.
I have a question about the Redfish. How does the Redfish and the SCTP interact, since they're both doing provisioning?
I'm not sure that they do interact, actually. And maybe SCTP as the prerequisites of the device PXE booting, right? If I'm not mistaken.
No, SCTP is gonna PXE it piggybacks off of PXE boot, but you know, there's a whole process for you to go and, you know, read off your QR code and go and ask your provider for the right image to put on that system, and from that perspective, it's very possible that you wouldn't need to use Redfish at all if you're using SCTP because, presumably the card was shipped out kind of SCTP ready. So the zero touch, the touch that you're saving is you don't have to interact with the card with Redfish at all because it was shipped from the factory ready to be zero touch provisioned.
I think there's a fundamental operating difference between like an edge device deployment and a managed system deployment. And I think that we're failing to account for that difference.
You said edge deployment versus what's the other one?
Yeah, so like Secure Zero Touch provisioning was designed around deploying edge devices.
Yes.
Whereas, if you know everything already about the card and you need to put a specific operating system on this device to handle this specific case, you're not going to necessarily redo the provisioning via Secure Zero Touch. You already know everything. So you're just going to take the shortest path, which would be, hey, Redfish, boot the following, potentially. And that model follows the way most operators are tending to handle physical servers as a whole. So they're able to handle both the device and the machine using similar patterns.
Yeah. Okay. But if we're saying, hey, you should do secure zero touch provisioning with OPI, but actually all of our Ansible scripts are with Redfish. So how do we square
but
that?
we have an SCTP implementation in OPI. So it's not like we didn't give it attention. We implemented something, there is something in OPI, but we are not saying this is the only way to provision a card.
Yeah. So we're saying,
Right,
so we probably do need something there to say, so we need something, again, going back to the spec, we need something that says, hey, when this card goes out and you buy this card or whatever, you're unable to sort of touch anything, but when it comes out, you should be able to secure zero touch provision it or manually provision it using Redfish, right? So that would be a good explicit thing to have written down,
Yes.
right?
Yes, and this was a comment that we had that we gave to the spec at the beginning when you list the ZTP part, and we kind of framed it around, okay, we will push a PR for the spec, and we never really gotten around to it. But yeah, this is part of the.
I'll go do that. I'll add this. I'll take the AR to. Okay, and so we're not actually writing any Ansible scripts to do SCTP for provisioning. We're going to do everything.
But we are writing Ansible script to transition the boot order to do from PXE. So in case you have XPU comes out of the factory not configured to PXE boot, I guess you can use Redfish to transition it to PXE if that helps you in any way. Not sure it will, honestly, in that case. But
I think if we say that an OPI device has to support SCTP,
I don't think that we are saying that OPI device has to support SCTP.
We're not saying that, but that's what we ratified in the TSC like time ago, right? Is that we are using SCTP, and if you're using SCTP, you can't not have it enabled out of the factory because then it doesn't work, right? Then it's not zero touch provisioning. Then you have to go in and touch every single card, and in the edge, that's not going to work very well. Like if you have to go and Redfish every single card just to get the zero touch provisioning in, then it's no longer zero touch.
Again, as I said, you probably don't need Redfish to do secure zero touch provisioning if your card comes out of the box with doing PXE boot, right?
Yep.
So you don't need it. But if your car doesn't come from the factory with Pixie Boot, then probably need to configure it to Pixie Boot in some way. You can do it manually. You can do it from Redfish, be like an initial operation. And as Julia said, a lot of the time, SATP is not what the customer might want. A lot of the time, customers have their own provisioning system that also do automatic discovery. I can think of a couple.
We should probably further delineate that as integrators are separate from customers, which are separate from software or solution service providers.
Yep.
All of these various layers of service provider, solution provider are going to have their preferred solution that works for them based upon their customer bases. And to hard code into any single one pattern starts creating barriers for entry and barriers to adopt and barriers to engage.
Yeah, and I think that cuts both ways. Is that it's a simple thing of like, is your card ready to Pixie Boot from the factory or not, right? And then, so at a minimum, we should have a way for people to say whether or not that's the case, right? So in sort of, and this is why, going back to the spec, it's that you write a spec, it doesn't mean that everyone must adhere to the spec, but it makes it easier for Intel or one of our partners or vendors or whatever to say, hey, here's the spec. Remember that line that says, we recommend cards come out of the factory ready to SCCP? Our card doesn't do that, right? Like having something written down that kind of, at least itemizes the things that you should think about while you're adopting these things. Be really
so
good.
Maybe what you are expecting to have is some sort of a review of the different methods and their assumptions. So
Yeah.
SATP assumes card is configured to Pixie Boot when it comes out of the factory. It's an assumption.
Okay. I think that's perfect. Yeah. So let me try to put that in the spec as somehow, and even just documenting the assumptions is super valuable. So then you can go and point to it later and say, oh, by the way, don't assume this. or I follow all the assumptions that are in the spec, and so if you were assuming to be able to go and do what you want with this, or if you don't like that, or that's insecure or whatever, then yeah, you have to go and configure it. Okay, so I'll try to add that one, and that is very helpful. That's a helpful clarification, is that we want to be able to specify the flow, whatever, for both SCTP and Redfish, and potentially there are, I can think of several others, and we kind of want to say, do we want to make some sort of OPI statement that like, hey, these are the ones that we chose, or?
That's a good question. I don't think that we should say these are the ones that we chose, but I think that we can say these are the ones that we covered, that discussed.
Right.
So I think we probably discussed SCTP, Redfish, and Pixie Boot as a bit of a combination of the two.
Right. Got it. Yeah. I consider Pixie Boot part of that whole pantheon. Okay, interesting.
Okay. Anything more on the spec? Someone wants to add anything? Okay. So on the Ansible part, I have to say in the past week and a half, I've been moving apartments, so I haven't paid much attention to it, but Jose has
Carl,
been reviewing.
Yeah, sorry to
Go
interrupt. Was a bit slow in raising the hand. just very quickly on the spec before we moving into the other topic. I was taking a look at the lifecycle management section, and there I think we have this system information where we currently capturing one possible alternative around the SM bias, right? And I think we touched it very briefly in the past around like what are the various different alternatives, right? Like since we are talking about Redfish, I think that could also be leveraged for capturing and querying the system information remotely, right? SM bias is more when it comes to the local system information query and how the device will capture locally the system information versus how we can actually query, let's say, a remote server system information over or leveraging the Redfish schemas. Are we planning to capture those different alternatives as well as part of the system information?
That's a very good note. Thank you for that. I haven't dug into the OPI SM bias bridge, honestly. But if we start detailing ways to retrieve information, at least, then of course we need to include Redfish there. I'm just not sure for detailing ways to retrieve information or just information we expect to get.
I think in the past we had captured some alternatives somewhere in the OPI provisioning. I was checking like in the background, but it seems like some of the link is kind of broken currently. You click on and get the exception 404 page not found. But okay, I'll search for it in the background, and if I'll find, I'll paste the link in the chat. But I remember we do had a discussion around what are the various different alternatives when it comes to system information or system information inventory query, whether it has to be a local or a remote network query or some sort of a remote host/PMC query mechanism. Like I said, I'll search for it. But this is something I think we should capture it somewhere in the spec.
I definitely agree. So you raised there two things. You raised there the way that we gather information and the broken links. So if you find a broken link while traversing the life cycle, please either fix it or open an issue on us, so we'll notice. Boris just sent a nice MR last week to fix a bunch of broken links. I'm sure that you have some of them. And to capture ways to retrieve information, I couldn't agree more. We have Redfish currently. It's important to document it as well as a means to retrieve information. And we already have the vendors example. At least NVIDIA vendor, I think. We are the only one.
It would be great to have just to put it in the spec, just a list of things. Like the improvement I did on the PLDM is I just listed out exactly the items in PLDM that you need to support. And I can make it even more specific to try to just make it, just get the bare minimum. But if we had the list of things that we want to get out of SM BIOS, and then, or the list of things we want to get out of Redfish, that'd be so powerful. Like that would make the
thing that we are basically saying
we're talking about
things that we are basing on.
Okay, I think that comment was that thing related to SM BIOS was specifically related to what we call oh my goodness, inventory.
Mm-hmm.
So right now the document looks like it's the only way to retrieve it, while we would like to prevent that kind of impression, and so that it can list either it mentions it only as an example, or it lists also redfish in that context of inventory information.
Okay. Sounds good to me, I guess, but that means that we need to either need to dig into, these are the system informations that every device must let us retrieve, and we don't care how. So as long as I, for example, can get the serial number of the device, either through Redfish, SMBIOS, or whatever, I'm good.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, so we can compose such a list. I think that the first thing that we should look into is things that we are relying on other flows that we have. So like the Redfish playbook is playbooks are a good example. If we are relying on retrieving certain information during flows that we want to support in OPI, then I guess we can list it as a system information. And there are things that are trivial, I guess, like retrieving the network interfaces.
So there,
Thanks,
yeah,
Alok.
the API, no, the API group does have issues open for those already. So there's an issue open on the API group for network interfaces and for virtual interfaces. So we should potentially drive that over there. Just let's have it in one place. Let's not do it in both places.
Do you think this applies to all the system information, or just my example?
Just your example. and
good to know.
But I could imagine if they start getting system information on their radar, that we should work with them. But yeah. Let's have an issue of let's open up an issue of what is it that the system information we want to track, and once we get to a good enough list, let's slam it into the spec and iterate. So I need to go back to see what we agreed upon for SMBIOS previously to see.
Luckily for us, we have an example from each vendor on the SMBIOS one, what he reports and what he doesn't. So and this could be a good starting point.
Yeah, I'd rather have it be like, these are the things I need. Like,
I meant to get like the list to filter. This could be a good starting point.
Okay.
Take a look at that and say, okay, like I can tell you that serial number is extremely important for a lot of cases. So I have to have serial number.
Yeah, I think it's been a while ago we had a review of the SMBIOS tables, and we compared what there is a tool, SMBIOS validation tool, what mentioned on one of the MD files. So we compared what the SMBIOS validation tool requires, what it checks for, and also we compare what, like, for example, in case of ARM, what system ready tests will require to have an SMBIOS. I think I created a table to compare SMBIOS validation tool and system ready requirements. I'm trying to find where it is. I thought it was somewhere.
No pressure.
On our site.
You can upload it to the Slack channel after this meeting, and we'll take a look.
Yeah, I think I had it in the chat in the Slack, but I cannot go back and see it because it limits to 90 days, I believe. And all messages who had been sent, I think 3 months ago, are blurred. Have you seen them? I definitely posted the link to the table to compare some bias tables, but I cannot see them in Slack anymore.
I 2 months ago I was in a completely different place, so I have no idea what happened 2 months ago, but I trust you. So if you find it, just send it in Slack. We can go over it.
Okay, I'll do it. I'll check it again and see if I can find it.
Thank you very much. That's perfect. Okay. Anyone have anything else to add? Right. So I'll send up a summary. Kind reminder, please go over the Ansible parts that we are pushing. We have a bunch of issues there, and even if you don't have the time to write the playbook or test them, just another pair of eyes to see that what we are doing fits you as a vendor, fits you as a user. That's also really appreciated. Thanks for joining, and see you in 2 weeks. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. See you there.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, bye-bye.